Is there a way of assessing for someone who might think they're emotionally available but really isn't?
Yeah, wow. Um, and you're a natural born assertive.
I am. Yeah, I am. It is true. Yes, I am.
That's a good thing.
The person that goes silent has all the power.
In many cases, that's 1,000% true. And it is a way of being passively aggressive, I suppose.
Yes, it is. When you're getting to know someone, the most important question isn't, do I like them? It's, can I trust them? And today, we're going to learn how to answer that question from an expert who has made a career out of decoding criminals. This is We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling, where I give you the tools and skills you need to love better so you can live better. Dating requires skills that most of us are never taught. It's all about decoding people fast. Are they trustworthy? Do their words match their actions? Are they dating with integrity or just leading with charm for a hookup? In those first few dates, we are trying to assess character. We're listening for honesty, for emotional safety, for any glimpse into their agenda. But most of us are listening with hope, not strategy. And if we make it past the early stages, the stakes get higher. Because in relationships, it's not just about spotting red flags. It's about navigating the hard conversations. It's about knowing how to speak up without shutting them down. It's about recognizing the difference between discomfort and danger and staying calm when silence says more than words ever could. These are people skills, but they're also survival skills, and today's guest built a career on mastering them. Chris Voss is a former FBI hostage negotiator who spent more than 2 decades negotiating with terrorists and kidnappers using empathy as leverage and conversations as a form of strategy. He is the author of Never Split the Difference, and today he is showing us what negotiation can teach us about love. So whether you're swiping on dating profiles or you're 10 years into a relationship, this episode will sharpen your instincts, upgrade your communication, and let's be honest, I got a former FBI hostage negotiator to drop relationship wisdom. You are not skipping this one. And don't miss the very end of the episode, because that is where I will stop negotiating with Chris and I will start negotiating with you. One final insight, one shift in perspective, that's where the transformation happens. You have made a career out of decoding people in high-stakes situations, and you do it fast. I'm not going to say that they're the same stakes on a first date, but there is a lot of pressure to quickly assess whether or not the person in front of you is trustworthy. What should someone be watching for? Like, especially if that person seems charismatic and emotionally available and seems to check a lot of boxes.
Yeah, well, you bring it up in really good context, too, because if they seem charismatic, but they're little things that bother you, and you might dismiss them because they're charismatic or they're charming. And I think that's the people that hoodwink us come to learn that if they have enough positives, enough charisma in and of itself, then you'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and you'll look the other way. You'll let those things not bother you. You should listen to those things early on and not blame yourself in any kind of negotiation that we've ever coached. And my definition of negotiation is a long-term relationship of trust where you both prosper. And so that's why I think it's a direct analogy to personal relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But we're coaching a negotiation, and somebody says, they did something. I'd known them for years, and I was really surprised by that. And we're like, no, you weren't. You saw those yellow flags a long time ago. You just dismissed them because you doubted yourself. And the people that hoodwink us capitalize on their ability to get us to doubt ourselves. So back to your original question, if it's a first date, don't doubt yourself. You got good instincts. If it bothers you for a reason.
But said differently, what are the red flags that we should be looking for then on a first date?
For whatever reason, they, in a moment, they accidentally, they say something snide to you, either about the wait staff. I mean, you're going to get a good read on them by their interactions with the people that are serving, and
Mm,
maybe they're polite, or they make a snide comment to you about the waiter or the waitress or anybody else, and they kind of wink at you like the two of you are in on the joke. That's the a friend of mine says we ignore the yellow flags and later found out they were red flags.
that's good.
The red flags aren't really going to be there in the first interaction, but the yellow flags will,
That's
and you'll
so
you'll
good. You're
dismiss
not
those.
right, right? Because we're both showing up as our best selves. We're not going to put forward a bright red flag, but what looks yellow on a first date
Yeah,
will look red over time and become a red flag.
yeah, 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 exactly. And I think one of the most telling things is how do they interact with the people that are taking care of you. I'm a chivalrous guy. Did they engage in? If it's a man, he should engage in chivalry. He should pull the chair out for you. He should stand when you get up and leave the table, or when you return from the table. Is he knocking himself out to be chivalrous? I describe myself as a last century guy all the time. A man should be afraid to be a man. I mean, especially in social interactions. I don't diminish you as a female in any way, shape, or form by being chivalrous. I don't diminish your ability to navigate the world by holding the door for you, by pulling out your chair. I'm trying to be polite. It doesn't mean that you couldn't take care of yourself on your own. Of
Hmm.
course you can. But in this interaction, I'm trying to demonstrate, number one, that I'm being respectful. And there's nothing wrong with, as a man, being respectful to you because you're female. Yeah, no, I'm not going to hold a chair for another guy. But I'm going to do respectful things for the other guy that are appropriate based on societal norms, which is societal norms, if they're not blatantly insulting,
Right.
then
I,
you
I
should you
think,
should follow.
and I think for me, my biggest concern, were I to be on a first date, is are they telling me what they think I want to hear?
Yeah, or yeah. Well, are they listening? Are they genuinely interested, or are they trying to impress you? And I read everything that I can lay my hands on. There isn't enough time to read. So, of course, I've read Robert Greene's stuff, The Laws of Seduction, The 48 Laws of Power, and in his chapter in The Laws of Seduction about the charmer. I think charm is very close to empathy. And I'll butcher the quote of the passage, but he's talking to some female is telling him, or telling a story. And she says, I was at this dinner party and there was a guy there, and he was probably the most interesting man I ever met in my entire life. And then I was at another dinner party and there was a guy there, and I thought I was the most interesting person he'd ever met.
And that's the one she wanted to go on a second date with.
That's the person. That's a green sign, a green flag. If they're really enamored with themselves, and
Yeah.
they're making them, and they might be the most interesting person in the world. They're not going to be terribly interested in you.
Right. The most interesting person in the world in the wrong audience doesn't feel very interesting.
Right. Yeah. You're ignored. You're
And
left out. You're not part of the show.
so, how do you spot the difference then between someone who's genuinely emotionally safe and someone who is just good at saying the right things?
Well, I know there's a cliche that the rule of three, if you will. Now, it's not, you shouldn't become intimate with someone before you've had three dates. That's a misinterpretation. But seeing people in different circumstances, you need a comparative.
I like that.
And so that's why I know anecdotally, a lot of women say, don't allow yourself to become attached, intimate to a guy until you've seen him in three completely different sets of social circumstances, so you see how he reacts in each one of those circumstances. And I think that overall, that's just actually a great rule for relationships in general. I don't think it's men with women. I think it's humans with humans. And
Friends, colleagues.
friends, yeah, you gotta see them in three different sets of circumstances to really find out who they are. As an analogy, and so this rule of three for comparison, you need comparison. I've been on a couple of radio interviews, podcasts where they say, we're going to play two truths and a lie. You got to figure out, we're going to tell you two truths and a lie. You got to figure it out. And the first time I was like, okay, I'll play this game. But then I realized, what I got to do. Well, they didn't say I couldn't ask questions. So I started peppering them with questions. What I'm doing is get a comparison of how they tell the story. And I begin to ask questions and I begin to see how they interact. And there's a way that people interact on the truths, the two truths, which is consistent. And then as soon as I've got that consistency down for what they are when they're genuine, if, for example, they get to the lies, the third, I'll know by the second thing they've said. It'll
Wow.
leap out at me because I've got the comparisons. Now, let's say it was the second story. So I'll ask a lot of questions, but when they get onto the third story, I'll know the third is the truth, lines up with the first, which is the truth, inconsistent with the second. So again, by the second or third thing they said on the third story, I've got my comparatives. And I'll go, the second one was a lie immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, you need three comparables. And so you're not going to get those three in the first date at dinner. They're going to be on their best behavior. But it's going to leap out at you when you've had interactions in two other sets of circumstances. You have one set of circumstance here. Pay attention. If something bothers you, make note of it. Realize they're on their best behavior. They've sent their representative to dinner on their behalf.
Yeah, 100%. Their better self, the self that they want the world to see.
Yeah, and then don't doubt yourself. Every human being's got great gut instinct. Great gut instinct. The challenge
Well,
is,
as women, we totally train ourselves out of that because we don't want to be hysterical. We don't want to be dramatic. You know this better than most people.
I'd say both are true. Because I think women train each other to start relying on their soft skills at a very early age. And so then maybe it might possibly be the sets of circumstances where you're most likely to doubt yourself. That's what I would offer as a contention. And I could see where in dating circumstances, then as a gender, you guys might be a little harder on yourselves with the sort of thing that you're talking about. And in other sets of circumstances, I think you guys, my explanation for this, nature versus nurture, all right? And I know there's a lot of discussion whether or not there's nature differences. There might be, but to me, the nurture is up until about age 9 or 10. Females are kind of comparable to little boys. Before you hit puberty, there's a pretty good chance that a girl's going to be able to throw a football farther, going to be able to run faster, hit a baseball better. But there's an inevitable change coming. And because of that, women who have gone through puberty become adult females, they know that this little girl who's now currently physically more capable than the boys, she's going to lose that advantage. We got to start teaching her sooner rather than later soft skills.
Oh, that's interesting. I see what you're saying. So we have to be more strategic because we don't have the might. We can't compete strength wise.
You know, the day's coming that he's going to be stronger than you.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said a couple of minutes ago, the rule of threes. So if I were to take that and apply it in real life, I would go on a first date with someone and then I would introduce it. The second area is easy enough to imagine. I'm introducing the person to my peer group,
Right.
but and then what? Bring them right home, date 3, or like real early on to see what people's sense of the person is. I think people are inclined to hold back on meeting the family for fear that they're going to trigger a flight response, especially in a heterosexual, I would say in just about any relationship dynamic that you could imagine. We're afraid of pressuring the partner and making the partner immediately want to flee for fear that we're trying to like cuff them too fast.
Yeah,
So
entirely possible.
so override that and bring them to the family?
Well, I think the family might be a little early.
Okay.
But, what's another social circumstance? Did they see your friends at a party? Or did you go to a charitable event where your friends weren't necessarily there, but there was a lot of people and it's a different environment? It just has to be a third different environment. It could be the changes could be what's external. There should be other people involved. The set of your friends is a set of people. Now, how the two of you going to interact with each other in a larger setting where there's lots of people that you may become socially connected with, whether it be a charitable event, a business networking event, like who knows? You need a third comparable to get to the two truths in a lie, I guess.
Yeah. And going back to what I said, I don't know that I can only go off of my own experience is certainly not generalizable, but in defense of, you know, provoking a fear or a flight response in a partner, I remember when I was single, I would say date one. I'm looking for a long-term relationship. So if that's not what you're interested in, um, I'm not your girl. And by the way, if you're hoping that we're going to hook up, I have the self control of Mother Teresa. I didn't know I was gay at the time. I thought I was just like the most virtually morally superior human being on the planet. It turned out I was gay. That's how I was able to say no all the time. But I would tell these people back then I was dating men, and I would tell people very early on, like, if you're not interested in a long-term relationship, you're going to learn very soon that we're not going to hook up until I'm sure that you're interested in that. So if you want to cut loose, tell me right now. And it was very effective for me. Um, would that ever be your guidance? Not the
You
gay
know,
part.
well, if it works for you, that's the first thing. I mean, it's a core value that you're comfortable with. Now, that doesn't mean that other people don't have different core values. And I try to be very non-judgmental on core values. Like it's if it works for you, that's cool. I know a couple of very happily married people. One couple in particular, where right off the bat the girl said, "Look, I ain't looking for a relationship right now.
Hmm.
I'm
I've
just out
seen
to
that too.
have a good time." And they're married and they got a kid now, and they're both very successful human beings. Now, that doesn't mean that that should be your set of rules, your set of criteria. You shouldn't doubt your criteria because somebody else got different criteria. As far as I'm concerned, unless you're breaking a law, you're entitled to your core values, whatever they are. And then if your core values, you're breaking a law, then again, all right, so we got a mismatch of values. But you got a rule going like, I want to say this. This is what I'm comfortable with. And I think you should 1,000% stick to that, even if you know the story of the girl that said on the first date, "Look, I'm just here to get laid," because and they end up happily married.
I know I have friends like that as well. And back to my point, it did provoke some of the people to like be like, you know what? I'm probably not as ready for a long-term relationship as you are. Let's have a great night tonight and we'll see where things go. And that was it. At the end of the night, we were done. And I appreciated that because I didn't waste my time. They didn't waste their time. It was no harm, no foul. I literally, and so to the point or the question of how do you know if somebody's emotionally unavailable, I would trigger that in them, I guess. They weren't
Yeah,
down
that's right.
for a relationship.
And well, there's decent candor there too. I mean, empathy is about being able to tell the truth in an emotionally intelligent way. Some people call that radical candor. There's a lot of different titles that have been put on that. But you can say that in a non-judgmental way, and then the other guy, the person on the other side of the table says, "All right, cool, fair enough. It's probably going to be a one-off. We may never have another social, but we're here.
We're gonna
There's a
have a
pretty
great
good,
time.
there's a pretty good chance we could have an interesting conversation anyway. Let me find out what you think, and it could be delightful, and you never go out on another date, but you didn't blow the evening."
Right, for sure. Is there a way of assessing for someone who might think they're emotionally available but really isn't?
Ah, yeah, wow. There's a question, and I'm not sure this speaks to emotional availability. It probably will come out along with it. My favorite question these days, and we're using it across the board. It's a lot of fun. What do you love? So about. And Darcy, where you at right now? Well, what city you in?
I'm in Monmouth County. I'm 11 miles outside of the city.
Okay, so if I were to say to you, what do you love about Monmouth County?
The ocean and horse country intersect in a way that I never knew was possible outside of the Hamptons.
Okay, so what just happened if I'm paying attention? Number one, I'm looking for you to react genuinely, and you're gonna make some sort of a move with your eyes and your head, and you're gonna tap into a genuine part of yourself. Now, if you don't make that physical move, I haven't triggered a genuine response. And 99 out of 100 times, it's a genuine thing. You've just told me a lot about yourself, if I'm listening. And you love horse country. There's people who love horses have really interesting characteristics. Horses, which seem as detached animals, actually are ridiculously loyal once you've connected with them. And if a horse is your spirit animal, if you love horses, there's a pretty good chance that you're a little bit guarded, occasionally seen as detached, because when you connect, it's huge. It's just so huge. So, there's some, I'd be interested a little bit knowing you said horse country. So this is an environment that nurses horses and nurtures them, nurtures a love of horses. So the things about that, I'm beginning to hear about you, where the other things that are around it. It begins to tell me a lot about you really, really quickly, if I'm listening. Now, what's going to come out in the wash is your emotional availability, if I'm listening for it. And I love this question across the board because I mentioned core values earlier. I'm going to get a download. If I'm paying attention and I'm listening for what that means and what the implications are, I'm going to get, and as long as it took you to answer, I'm going to get a massive amount of emotionally intelligent information about you if I'm listening. Now, the cool thing about that is if you don't love Monmouth County, let's say you hate it, you love while you're there. And so I'm
Yeah.
going to find out why you're there. And I spring this question. I use it with Lyft drivers. I use it with people I interact with socially. I use it with people that I'm training in negotiation. I'm in Dubai about a year plus ago, train a bunch of salespeople. Dubai is the opportunity there is beyond. It's ridiculous. It's a phenomenal place and a tremendous amount of economic opportunity for hardworking entrepreneurial people. So I'm training these salespeople, and we're doing the "What do you love" exercise. I see this guy's not participating because it's an odd number of people in the room. I walk over. I go, "What do you love? You're going to do the exercise with me. What do you love about Dubai?" He says, "I don't love Dubai. I think Dubai is a polished precept," and then he uses an expletive. So I'm like, "Oh." And then he goes on to tell me about his family. And he's there because he's taking care of his family and he's sending money back for his family. And he doesn't like to buy it all for his own reasons. But, now a family, guys, hardworking, dedicated, willing to go the extra mile for the people that he loves. So he didn't love to buy, he loved why he was there. And the "what do you love" question, so much comes out with people. And it's also energizing.
It
When
is.
I can, if I say to you, what do you do for a living? Over dinner. Answer that question is probably going to drain you. Whatever it is, there's too much straight rational thought there. But if I
Okay.
say, what do you love about what you do for a living? Tapping into the emotion of love is highly energizing. And the other reason that I like it is no matter what mood you're in, if I can lift you in that moment and give you energy, I enjoy, and waving a magic wand
It
and
is.
energizing you.
Part of it is that it's a first date or a first encounter, and we're not choreographed yet. So I can't predict what you're going to ask me. If at the end of the day, my wife says, "What was your favorite part of the day?" I'm internally rolling my eyes because I'm like, she is trying to elicit an emotion from me. And I have a knee-jerk response to performing. It's resistance. I have a knee-jerk resistance to performing an emotion that I don't feel. It's the bane of my existence. Like it makes me profoundly unemployable, and but fairly authentic. Were you
Yeah.
looking for micro movements in when I answered the question? Were you looking for me to like break eye contact and look away for a second? Is that what you were referencing?
Yeah, I'm looking to see if you tap into the energy, and there are physical usually you turn your head to the side, usually general terms, which doesn't mean all the time, but I'm gonna know if you did it. Your head may go up, you may contemplate, your eyes are gonna move slightly, which is like you're just dropping a line right into that positive emotion.
Hmm.
And I've only actually probably asked that question 1,000 times. I've only seen a person not tap in once.
How was that for you?
Well, I switched it. I'm thinking in the time, like, all right, and it was a professional interaction. It was an artist, and we were my girlfriend Wendy and I are taking a tour of the artist's paintings, and I thought he was so focused on hosting and describing the paintings that he wasn't going to allow himself to sort of relax and tap into a
Hmm.
positive emotion, because he was there to make a tremendous impression on a lot of people that were coming through the gallery, and it was just a little bit overwhelming. What I did was I switched the what question to a label, which is seems like, and I said it seems like you really love it here. And actually that question comes into the brain from another angle, and I lit him up with that.
Did you? It's like a sneak attack. It's like you're actually making an assertion, which if it's not, it's going to provoke a response, even though it's not a stated question.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And you're probably more likely to get a full answer than a one-word response or a real tight response because the person wants to assert who they are in response to the assertion.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that.
Yeah,
And you're a natural born assertive.
I am. Yeah, I am. It is true. Yes, I am.
That's a good thing. It's
I am. Well, and until I learned how to hone it in, I was aggressive. I was aggressive, and that, I love making new friends. I make new friends. I try to make a few new friends every year. They don't always
nice.
work out into real long-term relationships, but a few years ago, I made a new friend, and we were working together a lot early on. Like first 6 months we met, we were working together like almost weekly, every other week. And at one point he asked me a question, I didn't respond, and at the end of the day he said something like, "You're I see that you have the tendency to be passive aggressive." I was like, "Dude, you do not. I am the last person who's ever going to be passive aggressive. If anything, I'm going to decapitate you with honesty.
All right. All
By
right.
accident, it won't be intentional, but sometimes in my delivery, I can be too brief and too blunt, and
Hmm.
it's not sugar coated enough for people." But yes, but so the hostage negotiator got me right, and the journalist got me wrong. Doesn't surprise me.
Passive
Yeah.
aggressive. That's an insult.
I found it insulting. I'm like, I totally have the capacity to express my own needs. I would never do something, because the other thing is that like I work with people all day long who come to me and have some level, even if it's small, but usually people have a good amount of shame in them because they've been made to feel by people or by society that that their sense of the world is not accurate. And so they
Right.
internalize that. And the last thing I want is to make you feel like you're nuts in an interaction. And if I'm passive aggressive, I'm actually acting, I'm smiling when I want to kill you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I would never want to communicate something maddening like that to someone.
It's
So
dishonest.
it's actually, I was going to say, it's actually in violation of my most deeply held principles and values.
Yeah. 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 Agreed. Yeah.
And I'm not morally superior for being an honest person. I was quite dishonest in my early years, and I learned very early on I don't get away with anything. So I stopped lying because it's a lot easier. It's purely for self-preservation that I don't lie.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good policy.
I'm guessing in negotiation that asking the right question at the wrong time can implode the whole situation. And the same goes for dating. So how do you bring up what you want and figure out what they want without scaring them off or seeming too intense?
Yeah. It gets back to what I said. Empathy precedes assertion. The more empathic you are, the more assertive you could be. Now, so what does that mean in reaction? In point of fact, it's warning people. It's that something's coming. And most of the time, instead of a warning, you give it denial. Like, and say, I don't want to seem selfish. Well, your gut instinct is going to tell you the impact of what you're going to say is possibly selfish. So instead of saying, I don't want to seem selfish, say, this is going to seem selfish. It's the opposite of what we're taught, what we see, to the point where I've had people say, don't never bring up a negative. You're playing a negative. No, you won't. Denying a negative is the problem. You should actually telegraph that it's coming. And your gut instinct, if you want to deny something, then your gut instinct is telling you that there's a predictable reaction on the other side. So instead of denying it, then you call it out in advance. And you might say, look, it's going to seem really selfish. I'm probably going to seem like the biggest jerk you've ever run across. This is how I feel about this. And the person's reaction on the other side is going to be like, no, that wasn't selfish. That was actually really honest. And I appreciate the honesty.
Mm-hmm.
So it's learning, again, it's your gut. Your gut's going to tell you potential negative reaction. That doesn't mean the answer is to avoid it or deny it. It's the elephant in the room. You don't get rid of the elephant in the room by ignoring it or saying it isn't there. You diminish the elephant by saying, like, look, there's an elephant just came in the room. There it is right there. And people appreciate, that's what a straight shooter is.
Yeah.
People appreciate being warned before bad news is coming. Then
Right.
they're ridiculously resilient at how they handle bad news if warned.
That makes a lot of sense. We are taught, I don't know even where I cobbled together that information, but that acknowledging any negative broadcasts that you're doing the very thing. Like, were I to come to you and say, I endeavor to be an honest person, right away your red flags would come up like, this girl's a bullshitter.
Right.
That I don't know where I got that information from. To use the word honesty in a statement immediately makes an audience member think of the opposite. I don't know
Right.
where I ever heard this from. It came way before I ever had even my first degree, I think. But you're saying that is not
Well, I'm saying
true,
it's
or
kind of
certainly
the
not an
opposite.
absolute. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not saying, look, I really got to be honest with you. It's saying, this is going to sound harsh.
Hmm.
It's calling the negative out in advance instead of trying to project a positive.
Does it inoculate the recipient a little bit because they're bracing?
It completely inoculates them. That's the crazy thing about it. Now, there's been a number of brain science experiments that have been done that if someone is feeling a negative and you simply observe it, call it out. That's what a label is. It looks like you're angry. That's making an observation. That deactivates the negative every time. Now, our experience and the experiments have not been done that back it up that I'm aware of is that it also inoculates it. And so instead of planting a negative, it inoculates from that negative, which is why, we teach people to, overstate the possible negative. Because what it does is creates this great inoculation.
I would imagine so much of that is in the delivery also, in your tonality, because if I'm in a disagreement with someone and someone's like, "Well, you look mad," that's not gonna de-escalate me. That's not gonna de-escalate me. That's probably
Yeah,
going to complicate my emotional state and also make me now feel defensive
yeah,
and then resent that I now have to perform a calm that I don't feel.
yeah. No, very, very well said. You hit the nail on the head. My head of coaching, Derek Gaunt, and I, we were talking about this the other day, and we'll be kicking something around, and Derek will come up with the perfect phrase, and he said, "Yeah, the tone sets the tone."
Yeah, that's a good one. The tone sets the tone. It's all so right. So we are so forgiving if the delivery what percentage, by the way, of how we're received by another person or perceived by another person, how much of it is voice versus body language and intonation?
I comfortably voice is 5 times more important than what's said. Body language, if the person can see the body language, what you do is you pick up if they're out of line. And there's the dad out there, a guy like me who communicates verbally for a living. We heard a long time ago, 100% of the communication was 7% words, 38% tone of voice, 55% body language. And all of us that communicate verbally pretty much agree with that ratio. Regardless, the first issue is tone of voice, body language, massively more than the words. And then the
Mhm.
real issue is, do they line up? Are they in line? I can say, geez, you just made an insightful comment. And that's a compliment. And then I say, you just made an insightful comment.
Yeah.
And it's an insult. So without changing the words, I change the meaning completely.
Mhm.
So yeah, tone of voice, delivery, how it lands. I mean, I can say some stuff that I can say when I said that you thought it was lying, and you're going to react negatively. And I
Mhm.
and then I could say when I said that you thought I was lying, and you'd listen.
Yeah. Years ago, I had an assistant from, Scotland, and I used to tell people she could tell me to go fuck myself, but with her accent and the delivery of it, it's like syrup on sweet potatoes. Like, it just rolls right off my back. It
Yeah.
doesn't offend me. She doesn't offend me no matter what. And then you're not even from New York. I was gonna use myself as the example. Like, I can come across as gruff. I don't
A
think
New York
I
chick, right? You're a tough New York
yeah,
chick.
well, it's just like it's the way I
Good.
talk with my hands, and I tend to speak a little bit louder than a lot of people. I curse a lot, except when I'm mad. When I'm mad, I don't curse. That's how you know I'm mad. I won't curse, and I try to. I used to be so much better at modulating my volume than I am, if I'm to be honest. In recent years, um, that it's my age. It's because I'm going through the menopause. I'm coming out the other side. I'm not going to let it. I'm
You're
not going to
getting you're
become
getting
lazy.
younger every year.
Oh yeah, that's what's happening. Except my innards don't feel that. But all of which is to say, um, I wonder if you have real good control of your volume and your cadence. Do you ever come across as a little bit rougher than you intend?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And if I'm tired, if there's been an accumulation of negative things, so yeah, absolutely. I say I start firing off texts to my team at the end of the day that I have to apologize for the very next day.
It's
So
rough, man.
yeah,
It's rough. I'm told I text like a man, and well, that's what texting is for. It's for logistics. It's not for feelings. If we're gonna have a feeling conversation, call me. Don't expect me to tend to your feelings on text.
yeah,
It's not gonna happen.
yeah. Hand grenades.
You know, I don't just talk about mental health, I live it. And in my 20s, I built a boutique private practice that reflects the kind of therapy I always needed. It's called Alternatives Counseling, and we are now accepting new clients. If you've ever listened to this podcast and thought, I wish I had someone to walk me through this in real life, that is exactly what we do. We work with individuals and couples, especially high achievers, who are killing it in their careers and want that same success in their personal lives. We help you build deeper, healthier connections without losing yourself in the process. This is evidence-based therapy delivered by licensed therapists who are the best of the best. Change is hard. Doing it alone is harder. Come do the work with us at alternativescounseling.com. When we go from dating to entering a relationship, the big question shifts from can I trust the person to can we talk about hard things without imploding? I find that people fall into one of three categories. They avoid hard conversations.
Yeah.
They bulldoze through them, which used to be me, or they go silent when they're on the receiving end of them. And I imagine that you've dealt with each of these archetypes in your work as a former hostage negotiator. Can I get a takeaway for handling each one of these?
Yeah. And, I love that you said that because you just exactly described the behavior of the three conflict types. There's an instrument out there called the TKI, Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument. It breaks people up into 5 types. I first found out about it when I was at Harvard. The Harvard guys threw out 2 of the 5 and came up with 3. We have adapted it and changed the terminology some, but basically it's assertive, analyst, accommodator, fight, flight, make friends. It's how people respond to conflict. We found it to be universal. It doesn't matter gender, religion, ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
And so the assertive bulldozers through. The analyst, very analytical, just becomes they don't necessarily go silent because they don't talk a lot anyway. They're highly analytical, and they often come out as cold and distant. Now the accommodator is the hope-based person, and the way they signal anger is silence. They focus on, and a hope-based person focus very highly on positive interaction. They're often seen as the most relationship based person. They're not necessarily the most relationship, but they're the nicest, they're the happiest, they're the upbeat most of the time. My girlfriend Wendy is an accommodator. She's always hopeful, and they signal anger by going silent. And if she was
Because
dead silent,
they have nothing positive to say.
well, the meanest thing that they could do is go silent because communication is to interact.
And it's the most aggressive aspect of communication. The person that goes silent has all the power.
In many cases, that's 1,000% true. And it is a way of being passively aggressive, I suppose.
Yes, it is.
So how do you deal with that? The bulldoze person, respect is number one. They want to be heard, and they care more about being heard than they care about being agreed with. And a lot of people assume that they want to be agreed with.
Mm-hmm.
But if they feel heard, they feel very respected and tend to become very collaborative. And I'm a natural born assertive. And I'm like, you may not like me, but you're going to respect me. Whether one way or another, I don't care if you like me. You're going to respect me. That's an assertive. And if I feel respected, like, wow, I'll collaborate with you. And when I feel heard, I feel respected. The analytical person, they just don't like arguments. They see it as highly inefficient.
Mm-hmm.
Now they want to be heard. Also, they don't want to be disagreed with. So if you let them know, look, you got a reason for saying that. I'm interested in hearing your reasons. They don't want to say I don't agree with what you're saying. Now you don't have to agree or disagree. They just want to know that they've got a lot of information that's really important to them, and they want to be able to share it freely without being judged.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually want to know what you think. They don't want to see it as incompatible. They want to compare it. They love comparison.
Right. They're curious. They're very curious people.
They're very curious. Yeah, very true. The relationship-focused person, they just want to feel that they can express themselves. They don't want, and that you there's hope, there's a possibility, there's a positive aspect to this. If we enjoy an interaction, then anything is possible. The most important thing is that we have an enjoyable interaction. So that's why I tend not to like argument, because they see it as the ending of the relationship. And as long as there's a possibility that we can work things out, their optimism is through the roof.
So what do you do with them?
Well, if they've gone silent on you, the crazy thing, one of the magic wands, apology. Like the assertive and the analyst, they're not that concerned with apologies. Apologies are cheap currency.
Mm-hmm.
Actions are more important.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a change in behavior? The analyst in particular wants to know there's going to be a change in behavior. I don't care that you did this wrong. What I care about is that you don't do it again.
Right.
I don't care. You chop my arm off. As long as you're not going to chop the other arm off, we can move forward. Did you learn your lesson? The accommodator is, as long as there's a possibility we can work this out. And I think I steered away from what do you do with the accommodator? Oh, the apology.
Mm-hmm.
They can't hear you till you apologize. Like, it's ridiculous, because the apology means almost nothing to the assertive and the analyst, which is why we don't apologize.
Mm-hmm.
Because
What do you mean?
we find, like, if I say to you, like, I'm sorry, like, I don't care. I call customer service, and Verizon has screwed something up, and they say I'm sorry, and my first thought is like, I don't give a shit if you're sorry. What I care
Right.
about is, are you going to fix my bill?
Yeah.
But the accommodator wants to hear those magic words, I'm sorry, and they can't listen to you. They literally can't listen to you till they've heard you say I'm sorry. It's ridiculous. It's insanely ridiculous. But they have to hear those words. And the assertive and the analyst tend not to say it because we think it's insulting. And the accommodator, until they hear it, nothing else matters. And
I
that's
want to
why.
offer a caveat to that. I would say that the apology, the I'm sorry, they do feel to me somewhat like empty words. I'm all about the repair. The repair. If you can tell me why what you heard me say, what you understand hurt me about our interaction, that's a different kind of apology. You actually never have to apologize, because if you're going to follow the relationship rules, then the way you're going to apologize appropriately, it's actually going to annoy me, because it's going to feel invalidating, because you're going to be saying some
Yeah,
version of,
yeah,
I'm sorry that that made you feel that way. And I'm going to be like, okay, we're back here again. We're
right,
back
right,
here to my
yeah,
feelings again.
yeah.
You like you're not taking responsibility. I'm sorry that it hurt you. But that the way we teach relationship skills, you don't have to actually say that. So if you can do a solid repair by saying, you know, if I were to apologize to you, hey, Chris, I know I was 20 minutes late for this conversation. And I realize I've always known how valuable your time is. And I'm sure that landed on you like shit. I'm going to make it up to you. I'm going to make sure that this interview is shorter and your time is going to be valued. You're going to have the same end time. Okay. I would imagine that that would land better than I'm sorry.
All right. So first of all, the assertive and the analyst are flip sides of the same coin. They are so close to each other. And what you just said was the analyst wants to know how it's going to be repaired in the future. And a lot of assertives have come to learn, yeah, that we encounter this problem. What's going to stop us from encountering it again? I have enough
Right.
experience in life that if the problem occurred, then it's predictable it will occur again absent adjustment. So that makes sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something, that's why the accommodator is a space alien to the assertive and the analyst. Like, we don't understand this creature. Like, an apology all by itself is critical, and you can't get over it. Again, I'm in a business relationship that we terminated a couple of years ago. Read this guy as a complete assertive. And so we get ready to terminate the relationship. We get on the phone, myself and my son Brandon. Brandon's involved in my business. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant negotiator. He's just damn near natural born. I'm taught, he's natural born. And so we lay this what we refer to as the accusations audit. We lay out a thing of how we hurt them, all the things we did wrong, on and on and on. And this guy listened for the longest time, and he goes, Brandon, you're really, really good, and you never apologized. And we both went, oh my God.
That's
Oh.
so it's critical. The guy is like, why didn't you just
He
apologize?
just wanted an I'm sorry, I'm apologizing. And there was something in his brain that short circuited his entire thinking until he heard those magic words.
Do people question, like, I would imagine that in so your company, just to provide some context to people, since you have stepped away from the FBI and hostage negotiation, you formed your own company, Black Swan Group, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Well, tell us what it does.
We coach and train business negotiations principally, and they turned out to be, if your philosophy is a business, not that you should do business with friends, but that you should become friends with everybody you do business with because your core
Yep.
values line up.
Hmm.
Then it ends up having impact on personal interactions, like husbands and wives are talking to each other, or whatever couple is, that was a
Yeah.
traditional, but so many are non-traditional couples. But people communicate better with each other. Parents communicate better with their children. A lot of people fed back to me, Never Split the Difference, great parenting book.
Right.
You know, several years ago, two really big fans of the book. The wife says, the then fiance, she says to her soon to be husband, I really enjoyed talking with you. What's going on? This week has been great. And he's like, yeah, taking this course, and they told me to use it with my girlfriend. And she goes out and buys books for all her girlfriends, boyfriends, and husbands. So it's
That's part of why you've sold in excess of what, 5 million?
yeah,
That
yeah,
book?
yeah, yeah. And so it's about genuine, legitimate human communication.
I would imagine when a client then wants to terminate the relationship and you attempt to retain them, it must feel like they're wrestling with someone in a different weight class because you guys are the ones who are teaching them how to negotiate, and now you're trying to retain them. Does that bite you in the ass?
Oh, we walk away sooner than they do. Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I teach people is walk away politely. I refer to it as the Oprah rule. The last impression is the lasting impression. But if it's going bad, you should walk away politely. However you're going to say, look, Oprah's kind of famous for saying, like, no matter what decision you make, I'm always going to be on your side. And that's the last thing that she says before, like, look, we're going to collaborate. Here's what I need from you. You don't have to do it. My value of you is not going to go away if you choose not to move forward. Here are the rules. If you don't follow the rules, I will always be on your side. I will always be supportive of you wherever you go, whatever you do. Know that I will always love you.
Wow, have you found that to be true?
Uh, 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 which part to be true?
Of Oprah, does she follow through with that? I don't have a personal relationship with her, so I can't actually speak to it.
I've had enough conversations relayed to me behind the scenes from people in a position to know. And you kind of know it's true because if you don't follow through, it ends up coming out eventually that somebody in your camp says, he didn't mean that. Or somebody in their camp said, their behavior never lined up. You never hear that about her.
Right. It is so true.
You never hear that. And if you didn't walk the talk, it's gonna come out. And she's been around long enough. She's walking the talk.
For sure. So you're not somebody who tries to retain a business relationship that with a client when it's clear that they're dissatisfied.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even though we're all trained that it is easier to retain, less expensive and easier than to find the next client.
Yeah. Well, and then that's what we're taught. And then what we've found is the person that you're seeking to retain is blocking you from the best client.
And bringing that back to dating and relationships, I would argue that when you're in a relationship with someone who is not treating you the way you know you should be treated and is not and or is not aligned with you on your values and principles, you are literally you're broadcasting to the universe that these are where your standards are, and someone better can't get to you. and
Somebody
so
better
often
can't get to you. Yep,
and
exactly.
so often people, like, we're attachment based. Homo sapiens are attachment based.
Yeah, yeah.
We care more about having a relationship than we do about having the right relationship.
Yep.
And we will, we've seen this in mammals across species, that we will stay in a relationship with something that's not great rather than be alone and healthy and risk loneliness. But that very tendency bites us because it blocks us from getting the relationship that we want.
1,000%. I completely agree. 1,000%.
The best negotiators don't just read other people. I imagine that they manage themselves and other people under pressure. But in relationships, we lose our cool quite a bit. We say things that we regret, we spiral. What are your best tools for keeping it together in the heat of an argument?
First of all, if I intentionally modulate my voice to, the late night FM DJ
Yes,
voice,
this voice.
yeah, the calming voice, it calms me down. Using it calms me down. I get what I have to trigger internally to use the voice, and I will often, if I'm upset with you, and both of our words are escalating, I'll use it to get myself calm in the moment. Now, what I've found personally is if I'm having a tendency to react negatively, I really need to give it at least 24 hours. You're 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind. I 1,000% believe in that statistic. So what's the flip side of that? If you're in a bad mood, you're dumber.
Yeah.
There's no way around
Yeah.
that. By definition, if the first stat is true, then you have to be dumber in a bad mood. Now
Yes.
the problem then you get two more kickers with anger that make it even worse. First, anger gives you a feeling of self-righteousness,
Mm-hmm.
so you're dumber and you're even more convinced you're in the right. And the anger is energizing. So if those things are true, if you're in having a discussion when you're angry, you're dumber. You're even more blind to it because you're more convinced justice is on your side, and you got all the energy in the world to plow through. And that's a definition for a conversation you're going to regret or you wish you hadn't said because of the damage it caused. So at this point in time, I'm doing my best to keep my mouth shut if I feel angry. And I'm not always successful,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm working really hard at just, if I can say this in 24 hours, I don't gotta say it now. I can say this in 3 days. I don't gotta say it now. I work very hard to keep my mouth shut if I'm upset.
I'm curious because when I hear you say that, I am recalling. Obviously, I'm sure you can imagine that I analyze myself to a molecular level, and I have done that with my childhood, and there are still plenty of blind spots, undoubtedly. But where I go in my brain is, well, the expressions of stress and anger that were modeled for me as a child were of rage. So my neural networks, when I get angry, the minute I get into my amygdala, which I do try to stay out of it. And when I'm lazy, if I'm not using my relationship skills, I get there so much faster into my amygdala. It's a big problem. So I really have to be on top of. I'm like somebody who used to be morbidly obese and is now in the right sized body, and I just cannot have sugar or flour because it's a slippery slope with me. And so for me, the emotional management analogy to that is I really have to be using my relationship skills so as not to light up that neural network often. But when you say to me that when you get angry, you immediately make a decision to drop into the late night DJ voice that you express so beautifully, I wonder to myself, well, what examples did you have as a kid for expressing anger, and how are you able to because it couldn't have been as resourceful as this.
Yeah.
And how are you able to bypass those early seedings in your nervous system is a big question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question though, because your parents set an example for you, and you don't do what your parents said, you do what you saw your parents do. And yeah, my dad wasn't he didn't fly off the handle often, but when he did, he was very, very angry, and you could feel it, and it would last. So I don't think I had great examples. I think my mother was probably far more careful about what she said. And I learned the late night FM DJ voice on the suicide hotline when I was in my how the hell old was I? My late 20s, early 30s. And just using it and relying on it, and then coming to the realization that it calmed me down is something I've really learned as an adult.
Do you go through a mindful, or did you used to go through a mindful exercise to kick that into gear?
No, I can see how that would be very useful, but I've done it
Thanks for the
enough.
empathy.
Yeah, no, depending upon how you're wired, how do I, it's like loosening up before a basketball game or a sporting event, stretch the muscles a little bit, and then you perform.
And it
Oh,
depends on the body. Some people need to warm up before they can stretch. Other people, no matter how much they try to stretch, they're not going to loosen up. So they bypass that and they warm up a different way.
yeah, exactly. And then that's sort of knowing what your physiology is, and now we're talking about, what your neurochemistry is.
Your book is called Never Split the Difference. You're not a big fan of compromise.
I
So I'm
hate
curious
it.
how.
I
I'm
hate it.
And so, brother, I'm curious, how does this work in your personal life? Do you not compromise? Because relationships are the Olympics of compromise. Or is that a position that you sort of leave at the front door when you finish work at the end of the day? How does
Well,
that work for you?
no, there's two things. Like first of all, the other side might be completely right. Like if to me fair is a two-way street, and that's the actual definition of fairness, and most people don't realize that. But it are a two-way street. And a long time ago, there was a friend of mine that said, "I can live by your rules. Can you?" So let's make it a two-way street. So if I want you to be willing to accept my solution, then I got to be willing to accept yours. Now, the real key is compromise is not blend. What's the blend? Because compromise is basically like 50-50.
But it's not in relationships ever 50-50, as you know. That's where you're going, I'm guessing. There's always one person that's bending a little bit more on one decision than on another.
Yeah, if you first of all, well, if you bent, did you feel heard? Did you feel
Yes.
respected in the process? If you feel heard and respected in the process, the bending is probably more how the process went as opposed to what the outcome was. People want to have a sense of ownership. And so then are we actually listening to the other side? Are we hearing them out? Are we respecting them? There's something deep, deep, deep down inside that we just want to be heard. We don't want to be agreed with. If we could
Yeah.
just be heard and
Yep.
feel heard.
Feel understood.
Yeah. And again, separate the word understanding, separate from agreeing. And then that gives the ability, you can make anybody on earth, no matter how, every one of their core values is against yours, but you can make them feel understood. And there's so much conflict goes away. It's amazing how much goes away and how undiscovered that is.
Why do you hate compromise?
Because it's guaranteed lose lose, and the other side is always going to resent some aspect of it, and that resentment is just not going to go away.
Is that how you operate?
Yeah, I want to blend. I want to find out. What are you thinking? I want to be willing to discover. A friend of mine, and one of my favorite phrases: "I'm willing to be smarter today than I was yesterday."
Which means you're willing to acknowledge that today you're not as smart as you're going to be tomorrow.
That's a very good point. Learning is an ongoing thing. Yeah, and there's no limit to. It's the only sustainable competitive advantage. So if I'm willing to learn constantly, so yeah, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to be shown. Do you want to go do this? I don't know, but all right, let's find out. Let's discover it together. Let me be willing to find out the blend here, or is there something I didn't know, or at the end of the day, I found out I didn't like it, or I find out it didn't work for me. As long as my intent is to continually be collaborative and get better with you, then we're not giving in. We're discovering, we're collaborating.
What is the difference between compromise and negotiation?
In point of fact, the practicality of it in practice, compromise is like, look, I'm worn out. I don't want to. I'm tired. I can't convince you. I'm tired of arguing with you. Let's take a little of your idea, a little of my idea. Let's slap them together and let's call it a day. And then the next day, you end up with something you didn't like, and you're unhappy with it, and you wonder how long you got to live with it. And then you tolerate it till you explode.
So you are future tripping on the probability that there's going to be resentment,
Yeah.
that you're not going to forget that you had to give up something in order to get something else. And you don't want to deal with that debt at some future point,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's your own or someone else's.
Yeah. That day's coming. No way around it.
Wow. Wow. So there's no such thing as good faith compromise.
I don't know of anybody using that as a recipe for long term success. It's not showing up on Earth.
So when you and Wendy disagree on something, how do you figure out what to do?
If it's a strong disagreement, then we're gonna. I'm not gonna try and blend it. I'm gonna be willing to go along, and then I'll take a ride on this, and then I've got to imagine myself saying later on, it didn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. And, we both got something to learn here. Yeah, we want to evolve. We want to get better. We want to get smarter. Maybe we want to rewire how I'm seeing this. But I got to be willing to discover something new. I think that I'm always ready to discover something new, unless like I know it's wrong. If I know it's wrong and we're not going to agree, then we have enough of a problem here that it ain't going away, and we're going to have to accept an incompatibility. And we haven't got to the point where the incompatibilities are there. In hindsight, and other relationships, them falling apart was to teach me a lesson about the inevitable incompatibility is going to be a deal breaker.
So you're looking for alignment with a partner.
Yeah, yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, I don't know how that works. We come from different worlds.
Well, it ain't easy, and if you find ideally if you keep at it till you find the right person, I mean, you got to rest easy. I'm a believer that you got to rest easy with yourself. I know that dying alone is horrible, but ultimately at the end of life, you're at that moment by yourself,
Yeah. I
and you
mean,
got to be
and
compatible with you at that moment.
you like who's in front of you when you look in the mirror?
Yeah, 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 exactly. And then, what example you set for the people that you love? Are you trying to the people that you love, whether they be your offspring or whether it be your close friends or the people that want to model you? Are you trying to model staying true to yourself? What do you want people to take away from your actions? Because somebody is going to look up to you as a model, and they're going to want to live the way you live. And what unhappiness are you trying to model for them, or what centeredness? If you're at peace with yourself, what if they were your child? What do you want them to do?
Right. And the worst thing I can imagine is that you become the example of what they don't want, like the bad general or the tough boss that was just unfair and abusive.
Yeah.
You don't want your kid or your loved ones to look at you as a cautionary tale.
Yeah. It's something to be avoided. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Chris Voss, thank you so much for this conversation. Where can people learn more about you?
BlackSwanLTD.com, BlackSwanLTD.com. And we got something cool, really cool started that I'm excited about just this year. We're referring to it as a negotiation community, the Black Swan negotiation community. Zero barrier to entry, like which means you don't got to pay to join the community. And what we're finding is people are helping nurture each other in their business and communication skills. And you're gonna find somebody who's being challenged. And I don't have enough coaches to give you quality coaching all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But you can always go into the community and find some other people that are working on the skills the same way you do. Uh, One of my favorite examples, there's a guy that turned his law firm around. Going into the pandemic, he thought he was going to go broke.
Mm-hmm.
A couple 2 years ago, he flew me private to give me a ride to LA by the use of the skills. I'm talking to him the other day. He's in the community practicing twice a week with other people in the community because it's so much fun for him. And he's happier, and people are reinforcing each other in the Black Swan negotiation community. And then you get to the point, like maybe you don't have the $4,000 it's going to take to be at our training in Dallas in the spring, but you want to get better now. So you got the $24 for the book, and then you go into the community, you find people that are like you that help you get better for nothing. It's great. I love it.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Darcy, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So now that we've talked, I'm going to talk just to you. So much dating advice is about how you present yourself, what to say, what to text, when to reach out. But there's another half that nobody talks about, the work of perceiving. Whether you're on the first date or 10 years deep, the assignment doesn't change. Pay attention to patterns. That's how trust is built, and it's also how trust is broken. If you're dating, don't get distracted by chemistry. Listen for character. The emotionally safe ones won't rush intimacy. They won't sell you a fantasy. They'll show you who they are in quiet, consistent ways. And if you're in a relationship, here's the truth bomb. You do not need to win the argument. You need to stay in the conversation, because emotional safety isn't about avoiding conflict or winning conflict. It's actually about creating enough trust that you both can show up, say the hard things, and still feel close on the other side. We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling is a Sterling Standard production. Editing and sound engineering is by Bart Migal. Our theme music is by Trending Music. Special thanks to Amanda Christiani and Robin Gentian. If you're watching on YouTube and you got something out of this episode, do me a solid and like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you can know. We'll be back on Tuesday with another episode packed with the relationship, dating, and mental health hacks you, my friend, have come to expect. References are always linked in the show notes. I'll see you soon.